Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! About 7 or so years ago, I was living in an apartment complex with my wife and a few roomies. It was one of those places that had just enough parking spaces for the people that lived there, so parking could be tight. So when someone say parked over 2 spots or parked really close to the line, people took notice. In this complex, we had maybe 3 to 4 handicapped spaces, a few in the front and one next to each walkway entering the complex in the back. Where our apartment was, it was closer for us to park in the back close to where one of these spots were. We did not need the handicapped space. The handicapped space was right next to a walkway which led to the entire right side of the complex. The walkway doubled as a van access space for the handicapped spot next to it. For a few weeks, this one guy, we will call him Bob, parked in the marked-off van access space with his very expensive car. Bob would park so far up the ramp that you had to step up the curb and onto the grass to get around his car. He was treating it like his own personal parking space. People did not park there for a very good reason, since it was a major walkway for the complex. People carried groceries in via that pass, moved in and out via that pass, and just generally got to the parking lot via that pass. Even more so, most of us knew that one of the apartments right next to that ramp belonged to a little old lady that had to use oxygen canisters. We knew that from seeing her and the sign bolted into the wall next to her front door saying as much, fully within view of the walkway. She had lived there so long, the handicapped space that was back there was labeled hers. I personally saw her struggle to get around the car once, as well as other people moving boxes or furniture. None of this even fazed Bob. He would keep parking there and ignore anyone else's problem. He would keep parking there and ignore anyone else's problems. We complained to the office, who just told us to call the tow truck. We called the tow truck and they didn't show. And Bob continued to treat the ramp as his personal, private, exclusive parking lot for his quite expensive looking car. One day, while going out to eat and whatnot with the wife and roomies, Bob was parked there again. All 4 of us were upset by it and a few comments were made. We got into our car, conversation still on Bob's weird behavior, and I had placed the key into the ignition and was ready to start the car when I remembered something. There was something in my trunk. Something bad. I opened the door and got out. The wife called to me, "Hey, what are you doing?" She knew something was up, but I wasn't ready to fess up yet. She might try to stop me. I opened the trunk and I found it. It was a Tupperware. Inside was a leftover lunch. The leftover lunch was a full helping of ham, potato, and cheese casserole. Not the best meal that my wife had made, and she admits it. Hadn't made it since. But when she made it 6 months before, I took it to work with me and ended up eating something else, after which I promptly forgot the Tupperware in my trunk, where it lovingly percolated for the next 6 months through one of the hottest summers our area has ever had. Every time we saw it in there, we'd always grimace and comment on how we needed to throw it out. But we didn't. Like we instinctively knew it had a higher purpose. The weapon, because it could only be that anymore, slushed with what I thought could have better water in a Tupperware as I walked to Bob's car. I stopped in front of his car standing on a walkway. I popped the lid open and almost vomited at the smell. I turned my head and took a deep breath through my mouth. The air held a tang to it that I could only assume was still part of the weapon. I steeled myself, moved my arm out to the side and threw the contents of the weapon toward the hood of the car like I was sowing the seeds of sweet revenge. The thing I remember best about the next few moments is that the contents that came out of the weapon didn't make a splash sound. A wet thud was what I heard. It struck the hood dead center. The momentum carried the sludge up the hood and onto the windshield, then slipped back down onto the wipers and air intake. I took the now empty container and hurried away, still holding my breath. I found the closest dumpster and threw it inside. Only once I was halfway back to the car where my wife and roomies were in did I take a breeze. I got into the car grinning like an idiot. The wife asked again, "What did you do?" Echoed by a roomie, while the other said, "Should we be worried?" I just said, "We should go." The wife, "Oh God." Roomie 1, "Reg, what did you do?" Roomie 2, nervous giggle. We went and got our food. While 2 in bed, I explained what it was that I had done. We headed back and parked in a space a bit farther away from where we had before. We took our usual route back to the apartment out of habit, which took us toward Bob's special parking space. In hindsight, we shouldn't have done that, but I saw Bob on his cell phone looking at his car. I spun on my heels and started walking the other way, right past the wife and roommates. They looked at me confused and asked where I was going. I said nothing and just kept going. They followed me to another route into the complex that was much farther away, but gave us a clear look at Bob from behind as we got close to our apartment. Bob was talking to someone and it was very clear he was not happy. I never got too close enough to hear what he said. I just quietly and quickly opened the apartment door, and before I was able to go inside, I saw Bob get into his car and drive off. I can only assume to clean off the warfare I had sprayed over his car. I sometimes wonder if he thinks someone did that on purpose or if someone just got really sick, like CDC level sick. After that, Bob never parked in his special space again, and it remained open for as long as we lived there. In a prior post in a different subreddit, I asked if I was a bad guy for wanting to call the police on my nephews for stealing from me. And the overwhelming support I got made me realize that standing my ground was the best thing for me to do. About midway last week when I came home from work, I noticed my shed door was open and the padlock that I used to keep it shut was broken. And I had a lot of bags full of soda cans in there. My friends and I tend to drink a lot of soda, so I built up a lot of cans over the course of about a year. And I was going to cash them in at the bottle drop soon because I like big payouts. It's 10 cents a can where I live after all. But there was more than just my bags of cans missing from the shed too. They took my gardening shears, a steel rake, 2 shovels, one of them being one of those folding camping ones, a full 2-gallon gas can, a cheap power drill I got for like $5 used, an electric hedge trimmer, and a small electric chainsaw that was also used, and a machete. They didn't touch the lawnmower, weed whacker, extension cords, or the old radio I had in there. No idea why they took what they did, but I guess they figured they could resell them or something. I checked my camera footage and they were my 3 nephews, ages 16, 15, and 14. Breaking into my shed was one of their dad's large claw hammers. I recognized the hammer because it's bright yellow and black, and their dad has a bunch of them. It only took them a few hits to smash that cheap lock. After they first broke into my shed, they took what they could by hand, and then they came back with some shopping carts that I'm guessing they also stole. But it took them a few trips to get all of the cans, and they didn't bother to even try and close the door when they were done. My sister and brother-in-law first denied their kids stole anything from me, so I went to their house and showed them the security footage from my cameras. I'd not told them I'd had cameras installed, and the reason I had the cameras put in was because of prior thefts by my nephews. It started with food and snacks, and then moved on to DVDs and video games, then pretty much anything they thought they could smuggle out after that. At any time I made them return stuff they had stolen from me, I was treated like the bad guy and then got the fakest apologies I've ever heard. And they never got in much trouble from their parents either. The final straw happened last year when my nephews broke into my house and stole 3 6-packs of my favorite blood orange beer from my fridge. They used my hidden spare key to get in and also took a huge dump in one of my bathrooms and not only didn't flush but also peed all over the floor. And I'm pretty sure it was intentional. The beer they stole was hidden in one of their bedrooms when I confronted my sister and brother-in-law about my nephews stealing it. And I was basically given an equivalent to boys will be boys when I wanted them punished. So I had the cameras put in and told no one about it, which turned out to be a smart move. When my sister and brother-in-law saw the camera footage of my nephew stealing from me, they seemed furious. But they were actually madder that their boy skipped school to steal from me. They had spent all day making repeated trips to the bottle drop and cashing the cans by machine. The bottle drop also pays by machine, so they just kept bringing the cans until they cashed them all out. And then they bought video games and junk food with the money. Said money actually amounted to nearly $200. Was that? And the destroyed bad luck, I told my sister and brother-in-law that they now owed me $200. Said money actually amounted to nearly $200. Was that? And the destroyed bad luck, I told my sister and brother-in-law that they now owed me $200. My sister and brother-in-law went from being angry at their kids to making excuses for them and then being angry at me for wanting that money back when I know they had 3 kids and a mortgage. I said it was either that or I would go to the police and press charges. They told me to get out and I said they have 2 days to decide how to pay me back before I go to the cops. I got back everything else my nephew stole, machete and gas can included, though they had already used the gas for something. But over the next couple of days, my sister and brother-in-law were blowing up my phone with a ton of messages, both verbal and text. At first, they were calling me heartless because it was right after the holidays and they have 3 kids and a mortgage. Then they started gaslighting me, they even threatening me. And all of this would go in a repeating cycle. My nephews chimed in from another cell phone and were sending me lots of messages of their own, which were more fake apologies and gaslighting. My eldest nephew even sent me a picture of himself holding a soda can and giving me the middle finger. So I guess they weren't taking my threats of going to the police seriously because family. When I last spoke with my sister and brother-in-law, they refused to negotiate any sort of method of repayment for what my nephews did. Even when I suggested they just sell the video games that were purchased with the money from the cans. Then they had the audacity to say that I'd actually tempted my nephews by having the cans in my shed to begin with. Oh yes, I'm the devil snake that tempted my nephews with a shed full of cans that just screamed money, money, money. So that was it. I went to the police station that morning and filed a report, gave them a copy of the video footage of my nephew stealing from my shed. I gave them the broken lock they smashed, showed them all the texts which were screenshotted and also given as evidence. Hell, I even gave them a copy of the photo of my eldest nephew sent me of him flipping me off. I did tell the police that I found it worrisome that my nephews had taken the machete, but they classified it as a tool, especially since they took a lot of other actual tools. So fair enough on that, I suppose. But my nephews were indeed arrested on Saturday. Police came to their house and my sister and brother-in-law were forced to let them in because they had a warrant. Apparently, all 3 of my nephews went from being cocky little jerks to crying like babies when they were being put in cuffs. I know this because a neighbor I'm acquainted with, that sort of friends with my sister, was there to see it. And shortly after the arrest, my sister and brother-in-law were blowing up my phone again. They weren't able to get their kids out of jail till Monday morning. And now the boys are being charged with larceny, willful destruction of property / vandalism, and harassment. The police took this whole case pretty seriously as there has been complaints about my nephews for some time, but nothing was proven until now. The past few months bags of cans have actually been going missing all over the area. Don't know if it was my nephews or not, but they are likely suspects. And with word spreading of their arrest, let's hope other neighbors with security cameras came forward with more footage. My sister and brother-in-law showed up at my house too. I refused to open the door and told them that this all happened because they are enablers who refuse to hold their kids accountable for their actions. That made them just scream and pound on my door more till I threatened to call the police on them too. and since I've done it already, they know I mean it now. So they left without any more trouble, but they went back to blowing up my phone. I didn't block my sister or brother-in-law. Instead, I decided to just save all of the messages they sent me because I've made the decision to take them to small claims court over this. I don't really need or want the money, and I've already replaced the destroyed bad luck with a much better one. However, the kids aren't the only one who need to be taught a lesson. In the end, I hope I put them in enough of a hole that they learn not to screw with me ever again. I also have the full support of my family on this, my parents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and so on. They are all supporting me in this because my nephews had stolen from them too. And after banning my nephews from my house, some of them did the same. I am going to push for my nephews to get community service, and a reason why isn't just because it's a good idea, but also because I know that they will hate that the most. Whenever they are made to do any kind of work they don't want to do, they just stand around griping and act like the whole world is against them. So hardly anything ever gets done. Perhaps a few hundred hours of unpaid work will teach them some manners. They have been spoiled far too much. I, 27 female, am engaged to my fiancé Raf. Raf and I are paying for our wedding ourselves. That was always something we planned on doing, and we have saved for a number of years to afford a nice wedding. Ever since my dad died when I was 6, I knew in the future if I got married, his dad, my granddad, would be walking me down the aisle and dancing with me in dad's place. Honestly, I think even if dad was alive, I'd have both of them because granddad and I always had a special relationship. When I played weddings as a kid, I used to have both of them walk me down the aisle. I was upfront about asking granddad to my mom and stepdad. They didn't take the news great. My stepdad wanted to be the one who performed as father of the bride, and he told me as much. He didn't like that I was giving him and my mom focus as a couple, but not him as my dad. And he said this because I arranged for a special dance for the two of them as well as a special toast to the two of them during the wedding. He said after being in my life since I was 7 when I met him and being my stepdad since I was 9 when he and mom got married officially, he feels like he is more deserving of the role. I told him I understood he was upset, but I had made my decision. He said it was childish to keep to a decision I made as a baby and never opened myself up to alternatives. When I didn't give in, they got a little huffy and I decided to leave to give them some space. Then my stepdad came to me and said I should let him pay for the wedding. This came out of nowhere honestly, but I knew instantly what he was trying to do. I knew that if I took his money, I wouldn't be able to say no to him. It would be entitled as hell to let him pay but not give him the role he wants and the jobs he wants to do. It also wouldn't have felt right to me anyway because I never went to him for anything. So it would have felt like I was taking advantage and he's never going to be my dad. He can't buy that from me. So I stuck to my convictions and said, thanks for offering but we're good. We have the money. He went on a long rant about how traditionally, the father of the bride always pays for the wedding and how tradition is important, and he said it was bad luck to pay for your own wedding. I told him we were a more modern couple and had chosen to pay for our own wedding with no financial contributions from anyone. He was angry and he left. Ever since, he and my mom have said I disrespected him immensely by denying him the right to pay. Mom brought up how he comes from a very traditional and conservative family and that it's shameful for him not to be paying for everything. She told me he had been looking forward to paying for my special day and I threw his more than generous offer in his face. My stepdad told me I had ruined the whole wedding for him now. Also, I don't want both granddad and stepdad to do the walk/dance. Am I the jerk for what I did? And now some comments on the post. Someone saying, quote, my stepdad told me I had ruined the whole wedding for him now. Okay, how ridiculous is it to say something like this to the bride? OP, you should make them be ashamed of themselves for trying to manipulate you financially into giving your stepdad a role. Since they care so much about paying, They should be okay with you still walking with your granddad, shouldn't they? Another commenter adds, "Not the jerk. You told mom and stepdad what your plans were. Stepdad thought that he could pull out his magic checkbook and take control of your wedding. When he figured out you weren't going along with his thinly disguised plan, he threw a tantrum that you were ruining the wedding for him. By the way, it's not about him. If he hadn't acted like such a brat, you might have been inclined to figure out a way to honor his contribution to your life. His behavior has made that impossible. I hope you have a wonderful wedding and happy marriage. Hugs and good luck."
And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.